What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Dad Needs to Talk. I'm your host Robert, and today I am doing a manga talk double feature discussing Volume One for both Cosmos as well as Rai Rai Rai. So this week, when I was kind of like looking at man, okay, it's a bunch of manga stuff coming up. What do I want to read first? What are going to be the order of different things? I was not expecting to read both of these series and then have them kind of be complementary in a way to where it led to this. Because at first I was like, well, I could do something individually, but I'm like, no, it'd be fitting to kind of discuss both of these together. So both of these series recently got picked up for English release. So Volume 1 of Cosmos is out now in English, and Volume 1 of Rai 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 is coming out in August. So Viz, I appreciate Viz Manga. They put both of these series up on the Viz app slash Viz site, but unfortunately, like they do with a lot of ongoing series and stuff, is for Cosmos, it's the first four chapters. For Rai Rai Rai, it's the first three chapters, and then there is a gap of chapters, and then a bunch of new ones that they will be updating as the new releases drop. But for the backfill chapters, we are more than likely going to have to wait until the English volume is released, which could be a long time because I've been in this hole for over a year with Full Night, where I was so happy to see them pick up Full Night, but it's like they're still working their way through the chapters that are missing. So I get sad every time I get a visit notification like, hey, new Full Night chapter. I'm like, I would love to read it. But I'm behind. But anyway, so Cosmos and Rai Rai Rai. So the short explanation I can give for both of these, and then check the timestamps where I'm gonna get into specific discussions with each one. But both of these series deal with sci-fi and aliens. Now the difference though is that Cosmos, the best analogy I can think of for this one is like a Men in Black situation where aliens are not a known quantity. They are pretty much living within everyday society or whatever, but it's just the average person does not know. Versus Rai Rai Rai, I kind of feel like that is a mixture of Kaiju number 8 meets Parasite with a little bit of the vibe of like a Die Dark slash Dora Hedora. And so where that one in Rah Rah Rah, aliens invaded humanity, invaded Earth maybe like 100 or so years ago, and 50 years ago, humanity finally won, beat the aliens, chased them off, but there was some basically like little pests and creatures and stuff left behind that there are now, different groups and stuff that deal with those different things. So yeah, so reading both of these kind of back to back were, like I said, felt very complementary to each other, but they're also very different. So I'm gonna dive into talking about Cosmos first. So Cosmos, this one was it gave me a lot to kind of like chew on and think about. So this one follows a young guy named Kaida or Kaide, where basically he's kind of like laissez-faire about life and stuff, whatever. He has a part-time job, all these different things. And so basically the setup for this one, which in a weird way, I'm gonna get into in a second or whatever, but he kind of has this ability, like literal ability, to smell lies. So he can tell if you're within, close to him, whatever, and you're lying to him, then he can kind of like literally smell a lie. Um, and so, anywho, so he has a classmate that hasn't been to school for a while. So everybody's like, "Yo, have you seen old dude? I know y'all are very cool, or whatever." And he's like, "Nah, I hadn't seen him." Well, another mutual friend they have, this girl who is the missing guy's girlfriend, is also like, "Yeah, I haven't seen. He's never returning my calls or texts, whatever." So they end up going up to his apartment after school one day to try to, just follow up and check in and stuff. Well, there were some kind of like shady looking thug like guys hanging outside the door. So they go outside to hide. And long story short, this mysterious girl with black hair shows up out of nowhere, being like, "Hey, do you know this person that's missing? I'm trying to track him down too." And they end up going to his apartment and discovering it seemed like a shriveled up like version of his body or whatever, but then the this person in question is shoot, my brain blanking, Ren Hamura, which is the girl on the cover of the manga. She's like, "Oh no, don't worry, this is just he just shed his skin." And the MC, he's like, "What do you mean, shed his skin?" And she just straight face is like, "Yeah, well, he's an alien, and then kind of starts going to things, and then the whole time, Kaide is like, she's not lying. I'm not detecting any lies or whatever. And so things kind of start to unfold from there, and you discover that Ren is from this intergalactic insurance agency known as Cosmos. And they basically specialize in working with different interplanetary beings and stuff, and helping them insure different things. And so, pretty much, like I said, things kind of just like roll on from there. But I like how, like I mentioned earlier, this one Cosmos deals with aliens hiding in plain sight to where there is this one kind of like lizard dragon dude that they introduce whatever, but whenever he's out in normal society or whatever, he just looks like a normal adult man or whatever. And then same thing with Ren, uh, which it sounds like she's able to like change her appearance or whatever. So I'm kind of curious to learn more about that. But in normal everyday whatever, she's just this young looking girl with straight black hair. But then you see her on the cover here with the silver hair with the red horns and stuff. Um, so yeah, so like I said, just kind of like really, really intriguing, just seeing all these different alien creatures and their true forms, and then them blending into society. And so yeah, they end up basically ran them through some stuff that happened in the first chapter, or whatever. They end up wanting to recruit Kaide uh, because of his ability to smell lies. And so, with that being said, it did kind of definitely make me kind of curious to learn more about him because with this series dealing with, aliens and intergalactic stuff, whatever, that's like a very weird thing for a normal human being to be able to have like that type of ability because a lot of the characters and stuff that you meet along the way in these first handful of chapters, they all have different powers, different abilities, so on and so forth. So it definitely makes me wonder, like, was did somebody in his family, an ancestor or something, was somebody an alien, and that's how he has his power? So, but anyway, yeah. So I'm definitely kind of very curious to continue reading more of Cosmos and find out more about what's going on with that. The other thing I want to shout out to with Cosmos, if I'm remembering correctly, is that it is from the same creator who did Beelzebub way back in the day. And I think he also did a manga that got canceled a while back called, I think, Aliens Arena and Hard Boiled Cop and Dolphin, I believe. But anywho, so so yeah, so very interested to check that one out. Like I said, it's the first few chapters are up on Viz and physically out in stores. So yeah. And the other kind of like curious thing too I noticed with both of these series with Cosmos and Rai 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 is that they both started in uh 2023. Cosmos started April of 2023 in Japan, and Rai 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 started in August 2023, which is pretty much the time frame that they're coming out here in English. So, but anyway, so moving on to talking about Rai Rai Rai. So this one, like I mentioned earlier, it gives me a mixture of like Kaiju number 8 and Parasite vibes and stuff. And I love like and this is something I forgot to mention in Cosmos earlier, whatever, but I love when series reference manga stuff within the series, whatever, because the main character in Cosmos, he mentioned something about a manga. I can't remember which one it was. And then Rai Rai Rai, she mentioned something about Parasite, which I'll get to in a second. But basically, so with Rai Rai Rai, this one follows a young girl. Like I said, in this world, aliens are a known thing because aliens invaded the planet like a century ago. Humanity beat them 50 years ago. And now there are different, like, private militia groups going out and exterminating, like, any of these leftover pests and stuff, whatever. And the main character, Tsunemori, she she actually works for one of these extermination companies, and so that was kind of Sumir, and that is kind of like what gave me like that initial Kaiju number 8 vibe because Kafka, he worked with like the Kaiju cleanup team or whatever before he ended up getting infected with the Kaiju parasite that turned him into the Kaiju number 8. Well, a similar thing happened here where Sumir, she was on her way to work one morning and she got abducted by aliens. Wakes up in a cornfield, and she is a kind of like a klutzy character, but her heart is in the right place, which I'll get to her family situation in a minute or whatever. But she gets to work late. Her boss is like, "Yo, why are you so late?" And she's like, "Boss, I promise I was abducted by aliens." And of course, he doesn't believe her because he's like, aliens haven't been seen since a decade ago or however long ago it's been. And so, anywho, throughout this series, uh, or throughout this early chapter, whatever, she ends up waking up one morning and her right arm is like transformed to like this hulking, like alien, like big monstrosity arm or whatever. And then it begins to start talking to her and things like that. And that's kind of where like the parasite part comes in, that she actually mentions of like, hey, you're like you're like Migi from Parasite, because that's legit what happened where this when she got abducted or whatever, they were trying to put this alien creature into her body, and she's not able to, or basically her consciousness remained in her body, and so now the aliens in her arm trying to take over her body, and they're kind of tussling back and forth. Well, one of these creatures or whatever pops up in the area, and they end up having to fight and defend themselves, and so she ends up transforming into a full, like, this big hulking alien creature thing, whatever, uh as a, like, defense mechanism, whatever. And basically things kind of go from there. Now, one thing with this one, in Ra Ra Ra, you kind of get a little bit more backstory of the MC, because she pretty much grew up in a, like originally when she was growing up, life was good and stuff, but her dad ended up, I guess, making some bad investments or whatever, lost all their money, ends up abandoning the family, and then her mom, mentally is out of it or whatever, and is taking out her anger and frustrations on the kids and stuff. And so Sumir kind of just wants to work a good job to be able to afford to take care of her family, specifically her little brother she has. And so it kind of gives a little bit more of a personal vibe to things with her. But yeah, so through, like I said, throughout this whatever, you kind of end up where she runs into, somebody from the one of these private militia armies and stuff, whatever, and they end up recruiting her because they're like, oh, you're an actual human or whatever. Okay, we can try to see if we can maybe help turn your body back normal. But in the meantime, hey, do you want to work here? We know your situation. You needing some money, whatever. Hey, here's what your paycheck gonna be. And she was, oh yeah, yeah, sign me up. but uh, but yeah. So like I said, it's very intriguing where things are starting off here, whatever, like I said, especially like I said, in a world where, hey, everybody knows of the existence of these aliens and different creatures and stuff. But definitely looking forward to seeing more, as like I'm sure we'll get to see more of the expanded cast and things of that nature. But yeah, rah. And like I said, in the other part too, it's kind of like a slight like die dark slash Dora with kind of like a little bit of like the dark humor comedy mixed into things. So, but yeah, so pretty interested in seeing how this one goes overall. And so yeah, so I think with that, I'm pretty much done. Like I said, let me know what y'all think of both Cosmos and Rai Rai Rai. Have y'all checked out either of these series? And if not, check them out. Let me know what y'all think. But I'm definitely interested in at least like keeping my eye on them. I don't know how soon I'll check back in on them. Like I said, especially because if I have to wait a while for them to update, then it is what it is. But these are definitely ones that I'm glad I got a chance to read the first handful of chapters and stuff. So, but yeah. And out of the two, I really don't know like which one I'm more interested in learning more about. I think right now it's kind of evenly, like I said, because they both kind of do things solid and in different ways. I will say for Cosmos, I definitely am interested in kind of learning more about the main character. Because, like I said, there's definitely something going on with you being able to smell lies in a world where there's aliens hidden amongst humans. Um, and then with Ra Ra Ra, like I said, I'm kind of interested to see more of how Sumir ends up working with her different powers and abilities and gaining control of that stuff. And who knows what other characters might be in the militia and different things like that. So, but yeah, good things for both of them. And with that, I'm pretty much done. As always, thank you so much for watching and or listening. You can find me everywhere at Danny's to Talk. And let me know what you think of these manga. And in the next time, I'll catch you on the next one. Y'all be easy. Peace.